Good afternoon, disciples. We're starting a little test here. I'm not sure if the audio is going to sound better or not, but my spouse recently bought a microphone setup from a former coworker of theirs, and it came with like one of those boxes that you put the mic in, and it softens all the sound to reduce echo. So I've got my Yeti in there currently, and then if this sounds good, I'll swap to the other mic and compare how that sounds with the box as well. But a lot of rambling. Let's get into it. Um, Happy birthday, Connor! By the way, my man, the man, the myth, the legend, Connor. We love him. Um, that's it. Got my hot tea, and we'll slip into it. Chapter 48. A devilish blizzard makes the snow whirl. The monk who seeks to worship Buddha walks on ice. The story tells how the believers in Chen Village noisily carried monkey and pig with pork, mutton, beef, and wine straight to the temple of miraculous response, where they set them all out with the young boy and girl in the most prominent place. Monkey looked around and saw that the offertory tables were covered with fragrant flowers and wax candles. In front of him was a tablet on which were inscribed in letters of gold, Great King of Miraculous Response. There were no statues of any other gods. When the believers had set everything out properly, they all kowtowed and made this prayer: Great King, our Lord, at this hour of this day of this month of this year, Chin Cheng, the master of the sacrifice, and all the other faithful of different ages, beg to offer, in accordance with annual custom, the little boy, Chin Guan Given, the little girl, Pan of Gold, pork, mutton, beef, and wine, for the delection of the great king. We beg you to give us the right amounts of wind and rain, and to grant a good harvest for all our crops. After praying, they burnt paper horses and all went home. When they had all gone, Pig said to Monkey, Let's go home. Where's your home? Monkey asked. Let's go back to old Chin's place for a sleep, Pig replied. You're talking nonsense again, idiot, said Monkey. You've made them a promise, and now you've got to fulfill their wish. You're the idiot, not me, despite what you're always saying, replied Pig. Why don't we just take him for a ride? You can't be serious about us being sacrificed for them. Always finish what you begin, said Monkey. We'll only be able to tidy this business up if we stay here till the great king comes to eat us up. Otherwise, we'll make him cause disasters, which would be terrible. As they were talking, they heard the howling of a wind outside. This is terrible, said Pig. What made the wind come? Shut up, said Monkey, while I cope. A moment later, an evil creature came in through the temple doors. Look at him. Gold armor, golden helmet, shining bright. Red clouds enfold the jade belt at his waist. His eyes were gleaming like the stars at night. His teeth resembled those of a pair of saws. Under his feet wafted sunset clouds. Warm and scented were the mists all around. Cold blew the negative winds as he talked. Heavy lay the air of death where he stood. He was just like an officer guarding an emperor, or a god at the gateway protecting a monastery. The monster stood, blocking the entrance to the temple, and asked, "Who is making the sacrifice this year?" "Thank you for asking," Monkey replied. "This year the village heads are the family of Chen Chang and Chen King." This reply struck the monster as very odd. "That boy has a lot of courage," he thought, "and he's a good talker, too. Usually the children who are offered say nothing the first time I ask them a question, and are frightened out of their wits the second time. Before I've even grabbed them in my hand, they're already dead. So why's this boy today so good at answering?" Instead of seizing him, the monster asked another question. "What is your name, boy?" "My name is Chen Guan Given, and the girl is called Pan of Gold." "According to the old custom of this sacrifice, I should eat you first," said the monster. "I have no objection," said Brother Monkey. "Enjoy your meal." Hearing this, the monster was once more afraid to grab Monkey, so instead he blocked the doorway and shouted, "I'll have none of your answering back. Usually I eat the boy first, but this year I shall start with the girl." "Better to follow the old custom," said Pig in a panic. "Don't break with tradition." Without any more discussion, the monster made a grab for Pig, who leapt down, turned back into himself, and struck at the monster's head with his rake. The monster pulled his hand back and fled. All that could be heard was a mighty clang. "I've smashed his armor," exclaimed Pig. Monkey, who had resumed his own true form as well, looked, saw 2 fish scales the size of an ice dish, and gave a shout of, "After him!" The 2 of them sprang up into the air, where the monster, who had come unarmed to this feast, asked them from a cloud, "Where are you from, monks, and why have you come to bully me, spoil my offerings, and ruin my reputation?" "What you don't realize, damned monster," Monkey replied, "is that we are disciples of the holy priest San Zang from the great Tang in the east, who has been sent by his emperor to fetch the scriptures from the western heaven. We were spending last night at the Chen household when we were told that an evil spirit, pretending to be miraculous response, demands the sacrifice of a boy and girl every year. In our mercy, we decided to save life and capture you, damned monster. You'd better make a full and true confession at once. How long have you been here, calling yourself Great King? And at 2 a year, how many little boys and girls have you eaten? Give me a full account, and return them to me if you want your life spared." At that, the monster fled, avoiding another blow that Pig struck at him with his rake. He turned into a wild wind and went straight into the river of heaven. "No need to chase him," said Monkey. "I'm sure the monster's a river creature. We'll have to work out a way of catching him and getting the master across the river tomorrow." Pig accepted this suggestion and went straight back to the temple, from where he carried the offerings of pork, mutton, and wine, tables and all, back to the Chen house. The Tang priest, Friar Sand, and the Chen brothers were waiting for news in the hall when they saw Monkey and Pig burst in and pull at all the pork. mutton, and other offerings in the courtyard. What happened in the sacrifice, Wukong? Sanzang asked Monkey, who related how he had told the monster who he was and chased him into the river, to the immense delight of the two old gentlemen, who ordered that the side rooms were to be swept out and furnished with beds. Here the master and his disciples were invited to spend the night. Having escaped with his life back to the river, the monster sat brooding silently in his palace, while his river clansmen asked him, "Why are you so upset this year, your majesty? Usually you are very happy when you come back from eating your sacrifice." "In ordinary years I bring you back some leftovers after the sacrifice," said the monster, "but I did not even have anything to eat myself today. My luck was out. I met enemies who all but killed me." "Who, your majesty?" "Disciples of a holy priest from Great Tang in the east who is going to the western heaven to worship the Buddha and fetch the scriptures. They had turned themselves into a boy and girl and were sitting in my temple. When they turned back into themselves, they almost killed me. I've long heard people tell of Tang Sanzang, a holy man who has cultivated his conduct for 10 lifetimes. One piece of his flesh will make you immortal, but I never expected he would have disciples such as those. He's ruined my reputation and stopped them worshipping me anymore. I wish I could capture that Tang priest, but I don't think I can." From among the watery tribe, there slipped forward a female mandarin fish in patterned clothes. She advanced with small, respectful steps towards the monster, bowing frequently as she said, "Your Majesty, there will be no problem about catching the Tang priest. But if you do capture him, will you reward me with a feast?" "If you have a plan, we shall combine our efforts to catch the Tang priest," the monster said. "I shall take you as my sworn sister, and we shall eat his flesh together." The mandarin fish bowed in thanks, then said, "I have long known that your majesty has the powers to call up wind and rain, or to throw rivers and sea into turmoil. But can you make it snow?" "Yes," the monster replied. "As you can make it snow," the mandarin fish continued, "can you also cause cold and make ice?" "I'm even better at that," the monster said. The fish then clapped her hands with delight and said, "In that case, it will be very, very easy." "Will you tell me this very easy way of succeeding?" the monster asked. "Your Majesty must lose no time," the fish replied. "It's now the 3rd watch, about midnight. You must make magic to cause a cold wind and a heavy fall of snow at once. The river of heaven must be frozen solid. Those of us who are good at transformations will make ourselves look like people and appear at the end of the track with packs on our backs, carrying umbrellas and luggage poles and pushing carts. We shall walk across the ice in an endless stream. That Tang priest is so impatient to fetch the scriptures that when he sees all those people walking along, he's bound to want to cross the ice himself. All your majesty needs to do is sit quietly in the middle of the river until you hear his footsteps, then crack the ice apart so that he and his disciples all fall into the water. They'll all be caught in one package." "Marvelous, marvelous!" exclaimed the monster, who was utterly delighted at the suggestion. He left his watery palace and went up into the sky, where he caused winds and snow, and made it so cold that the river froze. The Tang priest and his 3 disciples slept in the Chen house. Shortly before dawn, they all began to feel very cold in their bedding. Pig was shivering, unable to get back to sleep, so he called, "Brother, it's cold."
"Idiot," said Monkey. "You've got no sense of how to behave. Monks are not affected by summer or winter. You shouldn't mind the cold."
"Disciple," said Sanzang, "it really is cold. Look, double quilts now give no warmth. Hands put in sleeves find only ice. Strands of frost grow from withered leaves. Frozen bells hang from frozen pines. The cold is so intense the earth splits open. The water in the pond is a solid block. No old man can be seen in the fisherman's boat. No monk is to be met within the mountain temple. The woodman wishes he could gather more fuel. The prince is glad to pile more charcoal on the flames. The travelers' beards are turned to iron. The poet's brush is water chestnut hard. Even a fur jacket now seems too thin. A marten coat feels much too light. The monk on his hassock is frozen rigid. Behind the paper screen, the traveler is scared. Even in many a layer of bedding, one shivers and shakes from top to toe. As neither master nor disciples could sleep, they rose and dressed. When they opened the door to look outside, they saw to their astonishment a vast expanse of white. It was snowing.
"No wonder we were so cold," said Monkey, "if it's been snowing so heavily."
When the 4 of them looked, they saw that it was a splendid fall. Dark masses of cloud, chilling, dreary mists. Under dark masses of cloud, the north wind howls cold. Through chilling, dreary mists, a heavy snowfall blankets the ground. Indeed, the 6-sided snowflakes are flying jewels. In the great forest, jade hangs from every tree. First like flour, then like salt, the white parrot loses its whiteness. The crane's feathers no longer stand out. It adds to the waters of 1,000 rivers. Outdoes the plum trees in the southeast. As if 3,000,000 dragons of jade were defeated, the sky is filled with fragments of armor and scales. Here you will not find Dongguo's soulless sandals, the bed where Yuan An froze to death, the place where Sun Kang studied in the snow's reflected light, the boat that Wang Ziyu took one snowy night, Wang Gong's cloak, or the rug that Su Wu had to eat. All you will see are village houses set like inlaid silver, 3,000 miles of jade-like river and hills. What splendid snow, sprinkling the bridge with willow catkins, covering the cottage with pear blossom. When the bridge is sprinkled with willow catkins, the fisherman beside it dons his cape of straw. When the cottage is covered with pear blossom, the old man inside bums his firewood. The traveler is hard put to it to buy a drink. The slave cannot find the plum blossom for which he is sent. The heavy fall of snow takes off the butterfly's wings, The howling blizzard strips the goose of its feathers. Rolling drifts are blown by the winds. Layer upon layer hides the road. Freezing gusts come through the curtains. A chilly wind blows into the bed. This is heaven's promise of a good harvest. Good news that is cause for celebration. The snow was falling in abundance, like fragments of jade or cotton wool. When master and disciples had sighed in admiration of it for a long time, the two old Chen brothers told two servants to sweep away through the snow, and two more to bring the monks hot water with which to wash their faces. A little later, boiling hot tea, cheesecakes, and a charcoal stove were all carried out to the side room, where master and disciple sat around them. Venerable benefactor, the Tang priest asked, could you tell me if you distinguish between the seasons of the year here?
This may be a remote place, said the old man, and our customs and people may be different from those in your distinguished land. But our crops and animals grow under the same sky, so of course we distinguish between the 4 seasons.
In that case, why is there such heavy snow today, and why is it so cold? Sanzang asked.
Although it has been August, the old man replied, the frost last night marked the beginning of September. We generally have frost and snow here in September.
That is different from the East, said Sanzang. We have frost and snow in the winter. As they were talking, servants came in with tables and invited them to take some porridge. By the time they had finished eating, the snow was heavier than ever, and before long it lay 2 feet deep. Sanzang began to weep with anxiety.
Please don't worry so, said old Mr. Chen. And don't be upset because the snow is deep. We have plenty of grain here, enough to feed you venerable gentlemen for half a lifetime.
You do not know why I am suffering, benefactor, Sanzang replied. When all those years ago His Majesty the Tang Emperor graciously commanded me to make this journey, and escorted me in person by carriage to the frontier pass, he offered me a parting meal with his own hands, asking me when I would be back. I did not realize how many difficult mountains and rivers would lie in my way, so I casually replied that I could be back with the scriptures in 3 years. It is now already 7 or 8 years since I left, and I have yet to gaze on the face of the Buddha. I am worried that I have exceeded His Majesty's time limit, and afraid of all the evil monsters and other vicious creatures ahead. Today I have had the good fortune to stay in your great mansion, and last night my disciples were able to thank you by doing you a small favor. I was hoping to ask for a boat to ferry us across the river, never expecting that heaven would send this heavy fall of snow. Now the roads are blocked, and I do not know when I shall complete my mission and return home.
Do not worry, sir, said old Mr. Chen. Most of the time for your journey has already passed. You will only have to wait here a few days for the skies to clear and the ice to melt.
Then we will spend everything we have to see you across the river.
A servant then came in to invite them to breakfast, which they ate in the main hall, followed not long afterwards by lunch. Sanzang felt embarrassed by all this lavish hospitality, so he said repeatedly, "As you were being so kind as to let us stay, we must insist on eating more ordinary fare."
Venerable sir,
Mr. Chen replied,
we are so grateful for having the children saved from the sacrifice that we could not thank you enough, even if we gave you banquets every day.
After this, the snow stopped and people began to move around. Seeing how unhappy Sanzang was, old Mr. Chin had the garden swept and a fire made in a brazier, then invited them over to the snow cave to cheer themselves up by enjoying the snow view.
What a silly idea,
laughed Pig.
Spring is the time for enjoying gardens. It's much too cold in all this snow, and anyhow, there's nothing to be seen now.
You don't know anything, you idiot, said Monkey. Snowscapes are very peaceful and elegant. It will be a pleasure to see them, and it will make the master feel better too.
That's right, said old Mr. Chin.
The visitors were then taken into the garden, and this is what they saw. Although it was autumn, the scenery was winter's. Jade stamens formed on the hoary pine. Silvery flowers hung from the dying willow. Powder was piled on the lichen by the steps. Jeweled shoots sprang from the bamboo at the window. The craggy mountain tops, the fish pond. On the craggy mountain tops, the sharp and pointed peaks were like jade bamboo. In the fish pond, the clear and living water now was ice. Gone was the beauty of the lotus by the bank. The rose of Sharon's delicate fronds hung low. The autumn begonia was weighed right down. The winter plum was just putting out new growth. The peony pavilion, the pomegranate pavilion, the osmanthus pavilion, all piled deep in goose down. The place for forgetting cares, the place for entertaining visitors, the place for recreation, all covered as if with butterflies' wings. The yellow chrysanthemums by the fence were woven of jade and gold. A few maples were dappled white and red. Many a courtyard was too cold to enter. The sight of a snow cave made one feel like ice. Here was set a brazier of bronze, with heads of animals and legs like elephants, where a toasting hot fire of charcoal burnt, and some lacquered armchairs with cushions of tiger skin and screens of paper set all around for warmth. On the walls were hung ancient paintings by famous artists showing the seven worthies going out through the pass, a solitary fisherman on a cold river, amid a landscape of snowy peaks and mountains, Su Wu eating his rug, breaking off plum branches to meet the envoys, and writing in the cold of a frozen forest. There was no end of houses near a river pavilion where fish can be bought, mountain tracks buried in snow where no wine is on sale.
Were it big enough to live in, who would need to go to magical Pingu? After they had admired the scenery for a long time, they sat down in the snow cave and told the elderly neighbors about their mission to fetch the scriptures. When they had drunk the fragrant tea, old Mr. Chen said, "Venerable gentlemen, may I offer you some wine?" "As a monk, I do not drink," replied Sanzang, "but my disciples may drink a few cups." The old man was delighted. "Bring vegetarian food," he ordered, "and warm some wine to keep the cold out of these gentlemen." Servants then carried out tables that were set round the brazier. They all drank several cups with the two elderly neighbors. Then everything was tidied away. By now it was getting late, and the visitors were invited back into the hall for an evening meal. They could hear passers-by in the street saying, "Oh, it's cold today. The river of heaven is frozen solid." "That's terrible," said Sanzang to Brother Monkey. "The river's frozen." "In a sudden cold snap like this, I think that only the shallow water near the bank can have frozen," said old Mr. Chen. Then another passerby said, "The whole 250 miles of it are frozen as smooth as a mirror, and some people are setting out across it from where the road ends." Hearing that people were walking across, Sanzang wanted to go out and take a look. "Do not be in such a hurry, venerable sir," said old Mr. Chen. "It's late now. Wait till morning." He then said goodbye to the two elderly neighbors, and after supper the visitors slept in the side room once more. Pig rose at dawn and said, "Brother, it was even colder last night. I think the river really must have frozen solid." Sanzang went to the door, bowed low to heaven, and prayed. "All you gods who protect the teachings on my journey west, I have faithfully worshipped the Buddha and crossed many a river and mountain with great suffering and never a word of complaint. I am deeply grateful for heaven's help in bringing me this far, and I also give most humble thanks that the river has now frozen. When I bring the scriptures back, I shall report all this to the Tang Emperor and reward you sincerely." When he had finished this prayer, he told Friar Sand to saddle the horse so that they could cross the river while it was frozen. "Please do not be in such a hurry," said old Mr. Chen. "Stay here a few more days until the ice has melted, and I shall arrange for a boat to carry you across." "I don't know whether we should go or stay," said Friar Sand. "You can't rely on what people say, and you can only believe what you see with your own eyes. I'll saddle the horse, and you can take a look for yourself." "A good suggestion," said old Mr. Chen. "Servants," he ordered, "saddle 6 of our horses, but not the Tang priest's horse." Then, with 6 young pages in attendance, they went in line to the bank of the river to look. Indeed, the snow is piled up like mountains. When the clouds disappear, the dawn is bright. 1,000 pinnacles soar above the ice-locked pass. Frozen rivers and lakes are completely smooth. The north wind chills to the bone. The slippery ice is bitterly cold. The fish stay by the plants in the pond. The wild birds linger in the stubble. Beyond the frontier, fingers are lost to frostbite. The boatman on the river breaks his teeth while shivering. Snakes' stomachs split. Birds' legs break. The ice forms mountains thousands of feet high. The flowing silver stops in 10,000 valleys. Cold is the river's liquid jade. The east produces frozen silkworms, and mice make their holes in the northern ice. Wang Xiang lay on the ice to melt it, and caught a carp for his mother to eat. When the Emperor Guangwu crossed the river, a bridge of ice formed overnight for him. Many are the layers of ice on the pond, and the deep pool is frozen solid. There are no more waves on the mighty river of heaven. The gleaming ice stretches out as hard as a road. When Sanzang and his party reached the bank of the river, they reined in their horses to look and saw that there really were people setting out from where the road reached the bank. "Benefactor," asked Sanzang, "where are those people going to across the ice?" "On the other side of the river," said old Mr. Chen, "is the woman land of Western Liang. Those people are all traders. What costs 100 cash on this side can be worth 10,000 over there, and vice versa. And it's because such big profits can be made for such a small expenditure that people risk their lives to go there. Normally they form groups of 5 to a dozen or so and sail across, but now that the river is frozen, they're prepared to walk over at mortal peril." "Fame and profit are what make the world go round," said Sanzang. "They are risking their lives for profit, and my disciples loyally obey orders for the sake of fame. There's not much to choose between them." He then told Monkey to go back to their benefactor's house, pack the luggage and bridle, and saddle the horse, so that they could head west while the ice held. Monkey agreed with a chuckle. "Master," said Friar Sand, "there's a saying that goes, 'For 1,000 days you need 1,000 pints of rice.' Now that we're staying at the Chen house, why don't we wait here a few days longer till the skies have cleared and the ice melted, then get a boat to take us across? Rushing like this will only lead to trouble." "Wu Jing," Sanzang replied, "how can you be so stupid? If it were March and the weather were warming up every day, we could wait for it to thaw. But now it is September, and it is getting cooler every day, so it would be absurd to wait for the thaw. It would set our journey back a long time." "Stop all that idle chatter," said Pig, jumping down from his horse. "I'm going to find out how thick the ice is."
"You idiot," said Monkey. "You could test the depth of the water the other evening by throwing a stone into it, but you could never do that now that the ice is so thick."
"What you don't understand, brother," said Pig, "is that I can hit it with my rake. If I smash through it, it's too thin for us to walk on. But if I don't move it at all, that'll show it's thick enough for us to cross."
"What you say is right," observed Sanzang. The idiot hitched up his clothes,
strode to the edge of the river, raised his rake with both hands, and brought it down with all his might. There was a hollow thump as 9 white scars appeared on the ice. His hand had been painfully jarred.
"We can go,"
said the idiot with a grin.
"We can go. It's frozen solid right down to the bottom."
The news delighted Sanzong, who took them all back to the Chen house and told them to prepare to travel. Seeing that repeated pleas were not going to make their visitors stay, the 2 old men gave them some dry-cooked grain, buns, and steamed bread. The whole household kowtowed to the monks in respect, then carried out a tray of silver and gold pieces, and knelt before them. "We are so grateful to you gentlemen for saving the lives of our children, that we would like to offer you this towards the cost of a meal on the journey." Sanzang shook his head and waved his hand as he refused to accept it. "I am a monk," he said, "and what would I want with money? I would never be able to produce it on the journey. We have to beg for what we eat. The food you have given us will be plenty." When the old man repeatedly implored them to accept it, Monkey took just under half an ounce of it between his fingers that he handed to Sanzang with the words, "Master, accept this offering so as not to be ungrateful to the 2 old gentlemen." Only then did they take their leave. Once the horse's hooves slipped on the ice at the edge of the river, so that Sanzang almost fell off.
"It's hard going, master,"
said Friar Sand.
"Wait,"
said Pig.
"ask old Chen for some rice straw."
"What for?" Brother Monkey asked.
"You wouldn't know,"
said Pig.
"If you wrap rice straw around the horse's hooves, it won't slip and the master won't fall off."
When old Mr. Chen heard this from the bank, he at once sent someone back to fetch a bundle of rice straw from the house, then invited Sanzang to dismount while Pig wrapped the straw around the horse's hooves, after which they set out across the ice. When they had taken their leave of the old Chen brothers, and gone a mile or so from the bank, Pig handed the 9-ringed monastic staff to Sanzang.
"Master,"
he said,
"hold this staff sticking out sideways as you ride."
"You idiot," said Monkey. "You're trying another dirty trick. You're meant to be carrying the staff, so why are you giving it to the master to carry?"
"You've never walked across ice,"
said Pig,
"so you wouldn't know that there are always crevices. Step on one and you'll go in. If you don't have something like a carrying pole sticking out sideways, then you'll fall into the water and have no more chance of climbing out than if you were in a big pot with a lid on it. You've got to have a prop like this to be safe."
"This idiot must have years of experience walking on ice," thought Monkey, smiling to himself, and they took Pig's advice. The venerable elder held his monastic staff sideways, Monkey his iron cudgel, Friar Sand his demon-quelling staff, and Pig, who had the luggage on a carrying pole over his shoulder, held his rake sideways at waist height. Thus master and disciples pressed ahead without worry until nightfall, when they ate some of their dry rations. Not daring to delay, they hurried on over the ice that glistened and reflected the light of the moon and the stars across its white expanses. The horse never rested for a moment, nor did master and disciples close their eyes, as they kept going all night. They ate some more dry rations at dawn and pressed on towards the west. As they were walking, they heard a loud creaking noise from under the ice, which so frightened the white horse that it almost fell over. "Disciples?" asked Sanzang with horror. "What was that noise?"
"The river is frozen so solid that it's made the earth rumble," said Pig. "Or perhaps the river's frozen right to the bottom, here in the middle."
Half reassured, but still half terrified, Sanzang whipped the horse forward, and they carried on. Since coming back to his watery palace, the evil monster had been waiting under the ice with all his spirits for a long time. As soon as he heard the horse's hoofs, he used his magic to make the ice burst noisily open, giving Monkey such a fright that he sprang up into mid-air. The other three and the white horse sank into the water, where the evil monster captured Sanzang and took him back to his underwater palace with all his spirits.
"Where is my sister, the Mandarin Fish?"
he shouted stridently, at which she came forward, did obeisance, and said, "Your Majesty, I am not worthy to be your sister."
"How can you say such a thing, good sister?"
the monster replied.
"Once a word is spoken, a four-horse chariot can't bring it back. I said that if I caught the Tang priest by following your plan, I would take you as my sworn sister. Today, your plan has proved itself to have been a superb one, and the Tang priest has been caught. I could not possibly go back on my word. Little ones," he ordered his underlings, "bring a table, wet a sharp knife, open this monk up, cut out his heart, skin him, and slice up his flesh. I also want music played while I share him with my sister, and we both obtain eternal life."
"Your Majesty," said the Mandarin Fish, "don't eat him yet. His disciples may make trouble if they come here searching for him. It would be better to wait a couple of days until we know those damned wretches won't come looking for him before we cut him up. Then your Majesty will sit in the place of honor while we, your kinsfolk, play music, sing and dance around you, and wait on you, and you will be able to take your pleasure at your ease. Wouldn't that be best?" The monster accepted the suggestion and had Sanzang stored away in a 6-foot-long stone chest behind the palace. Pig and Friar Sand, meanwhile, recovered the luggage in the river, loaded it on the back of the white horse, and swam up through the waves as they parted the waters. When Monkey saw them from up in the air, he asked, "Where's the master?"
"He's not the Tang priest now," said Pig. "He's the drowned priest. We can't find him anywhere, so let's go back ashore and decide what to do."
Now, Pig was a mortal incarnation of Marshal Tian Peng, who had once commanded 80,000 sailors on the heavenly river in the sky. Friar Sand had come from the Flowing Sands River, and the white horse was the grandson of the Dragon King of the Western Ocean, so they were all good swimmers. With the great sage showing them the way from mid-air, they were soon back at the eastern bank, where they dried and brushed the horse and wrung out their clothes. Monkey then landed his cloud, and they went back together to the Chen household, where a messenger had already reported that only 3 of the 4 venerable gentlemen who were going to fetch the scriptures were now returning. The 2 aged brothers hurried outside to meet them.
"Gentlemen,"
they said, seeing their wet clothes,
"we tried so hard to persuade you to stay longer, and look what has come of your refusal."
Where is the venerable Tang priest? He isn't the Tang priest any more, said Pig. He's the drowned priest. Alas, alas, said the aged brothers, bursting into tears. We said that you should wait until the snow had melted, and we could send you all across in a boat, but he refused to agree, and now he's dead.
Old men, said Monkey, don't be upset. Don't upset yourselves over your friend. I can assure you that the master will not die. I'm certain that the great king of miraculous response has captured him by magic. So stop worrying. Have our clothes washed and starched, our passport dried out, and the white horse fed. My brothers and I will find the damned creature, rescue the master, and wipe this evil monster out. Then he'll give you village no more trouble, and you will, I hope, have a safe and peaceful future.
Old Mr. Chen, greatly encouraged to hear this, ordered a vegetarian meal to be provided. The three brothers ate their fill, handed the horse and luggage over to the care of the Chen household, got their weapons ready, and hurried off to find their master and catch the monster. Indeed, the true nature was harmed by treading on the ice. How could they be complete without the cinnabar? If you do not know how they rescued the Tang priest, listen to the explanation in the next installment.